Transactional.
Right. Okay, so welcome to our Sunday evening Zoom discussion with Ishan Prabhu. Ishan Prabhu, you can take over from here, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna. First, let us offer our respects to Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya and Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Maha Badanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gora Tushe Namaha Namo Brahmanaya Devaya Go Brahmanaya Hitaya Cha Jagat Hitai Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Today, with Ramchandra Prabhu's permission, we're going to talk about the subject. This is class number 9, following Srila Prabhupada. Following Srila Prabhupada. This is the meaning of the word Prabhupada, Anuga. Anuga means to follow, but how do we follow? So, in contemporary jargon of this world, the way people speak today, they're always having new vocabulary, of course. There's this word, transactional. It's a relationship. It's like a business relationship. For example, if you go on Amazon.com on your computer, what's the name of the man who owns Amazon? Jeff
Jeff Bezos, yes.
Bezos. So when we order something from Amazon.com, we don't have any connection with Mr. Bezos. There's no personal relationship. I'm the buyer, he's the seller, but there's no connection. There's no connection in any way, except that there's an exchange of money and a product. Now, there's another way to have a relationship, and that is a more personal relationship. So the opposite word, so the way we talk with the first way is called, it's a transaction. This is a transactional relationship. We're simply having a mechanical transaction. Money is on the table, product is delivered. It's a transaction. But the other word for a different kind of relationship is called relational, where if we have a sense of relationship with the person we're dealing with. There's an interpersonal exchange. And the interpersonal exchange means there's what? It's not just an exchange of a product for money or for whatever, but there's an exchange of what? An exchange of feelings. So these are two kinds of relationships. So the question is our relationship with Srila Prabhupada, is it transactional or is it relational? Is it simply that we're following a checklist of prescribed activities? Or is there an exchange, an emotional exchange, a feeling exchange in our heart, in our relationship with Srila Prabhupada? Is our relationship with Srila Prabhupada simply based on being obedient? Obedient fulfillment of a prescribed checklist of duties and services? Or is our relationship with Him based upon an ongoing reciprocation of feelings in the heart? An ongoing reciprocation of love. So according to this transactional approach, there's people are thinking like this, that if I get up early and I take my bath, I take my shower, I attend Mongol Artik, I chant 16 rounds, Tulsi Puja, attend Srimad Bhagavatam class, and, then we're taking prasadam, and then we're going out, we're doing so many services, distributing books, cleaning the temple, everything on the checklist. So the transactional approach thinks like this, that if I do everything on the prescribed devotional activities, the prescribed checklist, one day spiritual realization will be bestowed upon me. Okay? Yeah. We have our sadhana, we have our engagement, etc. So the idea is that if we engage very nicely according to the prescribed formula, Srila Prabhupada sometimes recalls it the formula. He's chastising us a little bit, but he's saying keeping the formula. He said there's something more than that. So the other approach is called relational. It's the relational conception of Krishna consciousness. This is transcendental to material considerations like time, the quantity of service. In the transactional, is thinking that just like we used to take a taxi when I was a child, when I was young, and the taxi, you'd get in the cab, and the man, he would turn on the meter. The meter's going. The more miles you're driving, the meter's tick, 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 and that way he's calculating the charge. So much service, so much money. It's like that. So then, but there's a time factor involved because it might be a trip to the airport. It might even be a trip to another city. So when the service has been rendered enough, then we're going to, then the payment is made. So if we're thinking in this transactional concept that there's a meter attached, and that if I'm doing enough service for enough period of time, one day it's coming that upon me will be bestowed realization in Krishna consciousness. But on the relational side, there's no question of time or how many miles, and there's no question of the quantity of the service rendered. Uh, um, just like if you're going in a very high class taxi limousine, you may have to pay more than if you're paying in an old jalopy, an older vehicle. In the same way, people are thinking sometimes that if I distribute more books, or if I open more temples, or if I do more, then surely I'll be getting more. But relational is not based on the amount of time, on the amount of miles, on the amount of books, on the amount of anything. In relational, rather than accumulating a score based on our accomplishment of service over a period of time, relational exchange of service and response. It's instamatic. In the moment, you will feel some level of reciprocation. Why? Because we're relating in a relational way. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada is relating back in a relational way. So let's take a crude example to try and bring this idea a little bit into focus. Say you have an electric lamp in your room. The lamp is not plugged into the wall. So we say, when the wires are all attached between the lamp and the power hose, it's called a closed circuit. But when the wires are pulled apart at some point, like at the light switch, the circuit is open. The lamp doesn't go on. But say if you take out the plug, the electrical circuit is open. There's a break in the circuit. So when we plug the wire, put the plug back into the wall, then all the wires are brought into contact and into connection. Therefore, the circuit is closed. It's complete. And the effect, it's immediate. The lamp comes on. So the idea is that when the circuit of connectivity between ourself and Srila Prabhupada is connected, our so-called reward, it's not something to be gained in the future. It's not chronologically dependent on the passage of time or miles. It's immediate. It's in the moment. So this is just a crude example of the electric lamp, the energy that produces the light in our room. It's the flow of electricity between the powerhouse and the lamp. The effect is immediate. Similarly, there's an energetic flow that illumines the Krishna consciousness of a disciple. This energy is an unbroken current. It's a current of love between the disciple and the spiritual master. The realization is immediate. It's transcendental to material conceptions of time and space. In fact, Srila Prabhupada explains that this process of receiving the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master can be attained not after many years, but within 1 second. This is from Bhagavad Gita. We're all reading Bhagavad Gita. We should read very carefully. Chapter 2, verse 72. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, one can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. Bhagavad Gita 272, purport. Let's read that again. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second. Within a second. Or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. So what's the difference? What is it? The essential ingredient in our relationship with the bona fide spiritual master, with Srila Prabhupada, that enables us to, quote, attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second. The essential ingredient is the reciprocation of love between Srila Prabhupada and ourselves. Srila Prabhupada describes the liberating power of a heartfelt relationship between a bona fide spiritual master and his disciple. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 20th verse, 20th shloka. And the purport, here's the translation of the verse. Quote, every learned man knows very well that attachment for material is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul. But, the verse continues, that same attachment, when applied to the self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. Srila Prabhupada is talking about attachment. Just like I have attachment, I live with my family members. I might have friends, etc. Somebody thinks that he's attached with his patriotism, with his nation. Somebody's attached. We have so many attachments, and they're heartfelt. So in this verse, in Srimad Bhagavatam, is saying that this same feeling of attachment, just like we have with our closest relationships in everyday life, this same attachment, if applied to self-realized devotee, it opens the door of liberation. So here's in Srila Prabhupada's purport. He says, attachment cannot be killed. Srila Prabhupada, we can't stop. The impersonalists, they're trying to stop everything because they're having so much pain in their heart, in their mind. They're having so much pain in their day-to-day life in relating with others that they want to stop all attachment. Okay? They want to so Srila Prabhupada says, attachment cannot be killed. It has simply to be transferred. You transfer it. The attachment for a material thing is called material consciousness. Attachment for Krishna and Krishna's devotee is called Krishna consciousness. A living entity, Srila Prabhupada continues, by constitution, he has the propensity to be attached to something. Our attachment for material things, it perpetuates our conditional state. If I'm attached to the things of this world, then I'm I'm making very strong my attachment to my material sense of self, my false ego. Identifying like that. So Srila Prabhupada says, our attachment for material things, it perpetuates our conditional state. But the same attachment, when transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, Srila Prabhupada is that devotee. This is the source of liberation. Srila Prabhupada is telling us that if we develop an attachment in our heart to Him, this will be a source of liberation. How this all works, but we will try to explain. In his purport to Madhya Lila, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 17. Madhya Lila, chapter 17, text 15, Srila Prabhupada describes specifically this kind of attachment that liberates us from our absorption in material consciousness. This is Sanskrit, okay? It's from the purport. Madhya Lila, chapter 17, text 15. Bruya snigdasya shisyasya guravo guhyam apyuta. So the translation, Bruya snigdasya shisyasya guravo guhyam apyuta. Translation. Quote, Srila Prabhupada gives the translation. A disciple who has actual love for his spiritual master. A disciple who has actual love for his spiritual master. He's endowed, how? By the blessings of the spiritual master with all confidential knowledge. This is the attachment that Srila Prabhupada is explaining in the previous from Srimad Bhagavatam. But now he's being more specific. A disciple who has actual love for his spiritual master. This is not transactional. This is not that I've got a list of things to do. I complete my list, therefore I get my paycheck. Therefore, I get my stamp of approval. No, he's saying a disciple who has love. It's relational, not transactional. It's not a transaction, a business deal. It's a relationship. A disciple who has actual love for his spiritual master is endowed by the blessings of the spiritual master with all confidential knowledge. Srila Prabhupada continues. He's quoting Srila Sridhar Swami, who's one of the greatest commentators on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Sridhar Swami has commented that this word, snigdasya, he translates it, he supplies another word, that this word, Sridhar Swami says, snigdasya, as we were reading in this verse from Bhagavatam, means, what does it mean? Another Sanskrit word, premavata, prema. The word premavata indicates that one has great love for his spiritual master. So, quote, a disciple who has actual love for his spiritual master is endowed. How? There's a reciprocation. By the blessing of the spiritual master with all confidential knowledge. So our Shastras, our scriptures, inform us that who is their bona fide spiritual master? In so many places, Srila Prabhupada writes, here and there in the literature, that one should not think of our spiritual master as an ordinary human being. Of course, there are some people that they're claiming to be spiritual master. They are ordinary human beings. But a real spiritual master, what a real spiritual master is described as Nitya Siddha. Nitya, eternally, Siddha, perfect. He's eternally perfect. He's not like us. He hasn't come from the material world, not a conditioned soul. He's not falling into the material world because he's envious of Krishna. He's Krishna's confidential, most confidential servant. We sing every day, Shakshadhari, Twinasamasta Shastra. So, Bande Guru Sri Charana, it's to this kind of spiritual master who is Nitya Siddha, who's empowered, Shakshadhari, he's empowered by Krishna to take the role, of spiritual master, to come to this world for no other reason other than to share Krishna consciousness with us, to wake us up out of our sleeping condition, to help us to reawaken that dormant love of Krishna, that love of Krishna that's sleeping in our heart, dormant. And we all have it, but it's covered. It's covered because our love for Krishna has been transferred to a love for illusory conceptions. My body, my, my senses, things of that nature. And I'm giving all my attention and trying to serve them, and there's no reciprocation. Why there's no reciprocation? Because dead matter cannot love us back. We're having a relationship with things that look like real, like it's real, but actually it's a fabrication of dead material elements. My job, my bank account, my social position, my body, my my clothing, my car, my house, my everything. We're trying to love it so much, but none of it can get, of course, we can get some temporary little taste, temporary tingle. Srila Prabhupada said, like a drop of water in the desert, like a drop of water in the desert. And then when that moment is past, we say, what's next? What's next? What do I need? Because the heart is never fulfilled by material. There's the material thing. So Shastra informs us that a bona fide spiritual master, he's empowered by Krishna. And what does that empowerment mean? That he can assume the role. What kind of role can Srila Prabhupada assume? He can assume the role of the super soul. Srila Prabhupada is empowered that the real spiritual master appears before us is non-different from Krishna. The real spiritual master, the bona fide spiritual master, the Nitya Siddha devotee of Krishna, he takes the role of the all-pervasive super soul. How can he do that? He's empowered to do that. Shakshad Hari. Shakshad Hari Tvina Samasta Shastra Uktastataba Vyataiva Sadhi Kintu Prabhoja Priyaiva Tasya Bande Guru Sri Charanaravindam. This is acknowledged in this verse, says that in all the revealed scriptures that Krishna's bona fide representative is empowered. He's empowered to act and as the therefore as the all-pervasive supersoul, as powerful as God himself. Therefore, we're instructed to cultivate an ongoing relationship with Srila Prabhupada as good as the Lord in our heart. When we establish a transcendental connection with Srila Prabhupada, he begins to teach us how from within our heart by sharing with us what? He shares with us the taste of love of Krishna. This process is described in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, right in the first volume. We have 17 volumes. First volume, this process, and by which this bona fide spiritual master shares Krishna consciousness with us. It's described in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita as what? The process of subjective instruction. Wonderful phrase, subjective instruction. Instruction we usually think means, somebody tells you, do this, don't do that. Walk here, don't walk there. These are bow down, stand up. Carry this, carry that. These are instructions. But there's a different kind of, those are conceptual instructions. We can understand, just like you are not this body, your spirit, soul, you're eternal, you're not separated, you're part of Krishna. You can't be separated. We're eternally Krishna's part. We are God. We're tiny parts of God, tiny infinitesimal parts. So there's never a question of separation. But in illusion, we feel separated. All of this is objective instruction. This is objective, conceptual. But there's another kind of instruction. Subjective means feelings, emotional feeling, heartfelt feelings. So this is described in Adi Lila. Adi Lila, first chapter of Adi Lila. Srila Prabhupada said, read my books, read my books, read my books. Did you ever hear anyone talk about subjective instruction? Did you ever think of subjective instruction? Read my books, read my books. He wants you to read the book so you understand our philosophy. Chapter 1 of Adi Lila, verse 47. Srila Prabhupada's comment on that verse. Quote, there are two kinds of instructing spiritual masters. Let's put that in different words. There's two kinds of spiritual masters. They both instruct us, but they instruct us differently, okay? There are two kinds of instructing spiritual masters. One of them, he's a liberated person. He's fully absorbed in meditation, in devotional service. Just like Srila Prabhupada, his every word, his every thought, his every gesture, he's always feeling Krishna's presence. He's feeling Krishna's association. So one is that he is that liberated person, fully absorbed in meditation, in devotional service. That's one kind. The other is he who invokes the disciples' spiritual consciousness. How? By means of relevant instruction. So one of them is always feeling Krishna conscious, is always feeling love for Krishna. That's one kind of instructor. And the other one is giving us concepts. He's giving us instruction. Do this, do that. The purport continues. And thus, meaning in this way, the instructions in the science of devotion, they're differentiated in terms of the objective and the subjective ways of understanding. So there's two ways of understanding, in other words, Krishna consciousness. One is an objective way, concepts, philosophy, and the other way is what it feels like to be a devotee. Thus, the instruction in the science of devotion are differentiated in terms of objective and subjective ways of understanding. So you can, so to receive objective instruction means to receive concept, to receive information. You're not this body, you're eternal. We talked about that. So the word subjective refers to feelings of our heart. Subjective instruction in Krishna consciousness is received. Srila Prabhupada writes, from who? From that liberated person fully absorbed in meditation and devotion. Subjective instruction is received from the liberated person fully absorbed in meditation and devotion. So being devotionally absorbed, Srila Prabhupada, he's empowered to bless us with this subjective instruction. He can give us these feelings, share with us. Srila Prabhupada, he's tasting the nectar of devotion. We have one book, Nectar of Devotion. It means Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sindhu is an ocean. It's an ocean of nectar. An ocean. It's described that the real devotees, the pure devotees, they're diving and surfacing in this ocean of nectar. See? So Srila Prabhupada, he's tasting this nectar of devotion, and he's empowered to share this taste with us. Now, there's other verses. His eyes are tinged, what? With the salve of love. People sometimes, their eyes get dry and they put some liquid, some ointment or what have you to make their eyes more comfortable. And so, but there's a certain kind of ointment. Of course, this is metaphoric. Vaishnavas, devotees, they're very poetic, is one of the qualities. We describe things poetically, metaphorically, to give us some idea that so it says that his eyes are tinged with the salve of love. It means that everything he sees Krishna. Everything he sees with great love. Whether it's a tree or a plant or a cat or a dog or a rain or a sun or whatever, or us, he sees us as part and parcel of Krishna. He loves us because he loves Krishna. He loves everything. So his eyes are tinged with this salve of love. And so we also say that there's poetry, other poetry says, we got to learn to see through his eyes. What is that? Have you ever heard this phrase? He's a transparent via media to see God. What does that mean? See, I'm wearing these glasses. They're transparent. I can look through them. It's a via media that brings the page that I'm reading into focus. It enables me, the glasses are a transparent via media to see this paper, this writing. So the spiritual master, he's a transparent via media to see God, to see Krishna. That means that if we can see through Srila Prabhupada's eyes, then we can see Krishna. It means that we have to be able to see through Srila Prabhupada's heart. Srila Prabhupada's eyes work the way they do because of the condition of his heart. When we can see Krishna, when we can see through Srila Prabhupada's heart, then Krishna will be revealed to us. This is the science of Krishna consciousness. So every morning we talk about that. Every morning we talk about that. We have to think, what are we saying when we recite these prayers? The lotus feet of our spiritual master. If we can really be very humble before him, it's the only way by which we can attain this pure devotional service consciousness. We say that. The lotus feet of our spiritual master is the only way by which we can. Well, how does it work? What does it mean that that the lotus feet? This is further on in the same prayer. And what is it? Prema bhakti ahoite avidya vinashayate. Prema bhakti ahoite avidya vinashayate. Well, there's a translation. From him, this love of Krishna emanates. Just like the sun is shining, heat and light emanate from the sun. They light up and warm the whole world. From him, Krishna Prem emanates. His, Srila Prabhupada's love for Krishna, it emanates from him, just like the heat and light of the sun emanate from the sun. He says, Srila Prabhupada says, I have so many disciples, I want one moon. What does it mean, one moon? What makes the moon shine? It's reflecting the light of the sun. But Srila Prabhupada says he wants a disciple who will be a moon, who will reflect. Prema Bhakti, from him, Krishna Prem emanates. It's emanating from him. It's just like the light. So he says he wants one disciple, just one, who will be able to receive that emanation and reflect like the moon reflects. He wants that moon. So he's saying he wants someone who can catch what he says, Prema Bhakti Ahoite. If we can catch that emanation, what will happen? Prema Bhakti Ahoite Avidya Vinashayate. In this way, our ignorance, avidya, vinashayate, is destroyed. From him, this Krishna Prem emanates. If we can catch it, by him, our ignorance is destroyed. How is it destroyed? Because if we have love for Krishna in our heart, it will obliterate all material desire. So this is the process. So how do we catch that emanation? That emanation of love of Krishna, how do we catch it? It's always there, but I'm not aware. Hey, how do we catch it? And so this is explained. in that Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, text 18, that we already read. Bruya snigdasya shishyasya guravo goyam apyuta. Translation. That disciple who has love for his spiritual master, he is endowed by the blessing of his spiritual master with all confidential knowledge. So what is that confidential knowledge? We have Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, confidential knowledge. What is that confidential knowledge? Idang tate goyatamang pravaksyami anasuyave. I'm going to give you this most confidential knowledge. What is that? Raja Vidya, Raja Goyam. This knowledge is the king of education, Raja Vidya, Raja Goyam, the most confidential knowledge. What is that? That if you just love me, Krishna says, what? Sarva dharman parityagya mamekam sharanam aham sarva papebhyo mokshaya. I'll liberate you from all sinful reaction. That if you just love me, I'll make everything perfect. I'll deliver myself to you, Krishna says, if you just love me. And I'll remove all the problems from your heart. So how do we get that love? So what is that confidential knowledge? The confidential knowledge is love of Krishna. If we have love of Krishna, we have all knowledge. There's so much knowledge. Vedasya sarverahameva vedyo. All of the Vedas, Krishna says, are just for learning how to love me. Knowledge, bahunam janmanam ante, after thousands and millions of births of being a jnani, of collecting knowledge, bahunam janmanam. Janma is birth. After so many births, thousands of births of collecting knowledge. Ante, after doing that for so many births, Gyanavan, one who really has knowledge, Vasudeva Sarvam, he understands, Krishna says, that Krishna is everything, and he surrenders his heart to me. So that's perfect knowledge. So the Srila Prabhupada is distributing this knowledge as love of Krishna. The disciple who has this love for his spiritual master, he is endowed by the blessing of a spiritual master with this confidential knowledge, love of Krishna. As we cultivate feelings of love for Srila Prabhupada, he in turn begins to share his feeling of love for Krishna with us. That's called subjective instruction. Not objective, but subjective. We feel it. He's how? Within our heart. How is he? How do I feel him within my heart? Simply, if we love Srila Prabhupada, we begin to feel his presence. We will feel, because he's the external manifestation of the Lord in the heart. That he's within our heart, but we can't see within our hearts. So he appears before us as the bona fide spiritual master. We shouldn't think of him that he's a man like that, ordinary human being. Srila Prabhupada said that hellish mentality. There's one verse, one who sees like that, who sees the deity in the temple and the bona fide spiritual master is an ordinary man, and the deity in the temple as material like stone or marble. That's a hellish mentality. So as we cultivate the feeling of love for Srila Prabhupada, we'll feel in our heart his presence. We'll feel in it. He's just waiting for us, not hiding from us. He's waiting for us. And so in his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, second chapter, verse number 18, 10 to 18. Srila Prabhupada writes, quote, as indicated by the word manasta, manasta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was transferred from the core of Vasudev's heart to the core of the heart of Devaki. Amazing, huh? Thus, the importance of initiation is mentioned here. This is what it means to have a real spiritual master. That he has the power to transfer, that he has the power to transfer Krishna from his heart to our heart. Thus, this is the importance of initiation is mentioned here, Srila Prabhupada writes. Unless one is initiated by the right person. Who is the right person? Srila Prabhupada continues. The right person who always carries within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the right person. Unless one is initiated by the person who carries within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot acquire the power to carry the Supreme Godhead within the core of one's own heart. Where do you find such a person? How do you make such a person? Do you have a voting committee that do you have a voting committee who is going to make such a person that he carries by votes? He's going to carry Krishna in his heart. Srila Prabhupada writes, this is the importance of initiation. Unless one is initiated by the person who always carries within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot acquire the power to carry the Supreme Godhead within the core of one's own heart. And Srila Prabhupada says, this relationship is a heart-to-heart relationship. We have to have a heart-to-heart, quote unquote, relationship with a pure devotee who always carries Krishna within his heart. He has love for Krishna in his heart. Therefore, he can impart like that to us. This is called subjective instruction. He gives us because Krishna is already in our heart, but we don't understand, we don't experience. So how can we experience? As soon as there is love for Krishna in his heart, in our heart, as soon as there's love for Krishna in our heart, Krishna reveals himself to us. Srila Prabhupada says it's like a television in the heart, that a person can be in this world but always seeing the pastimes of Krishna Loka. It's like a television in the heart. And not only is he seeing, it's interactive. He takes part. So, but how to have this television turned on? First necessary, first imperative qualification to have it turned on. We have to have love for Krishna. Then the thing turns on. Where do we get the love for Krishna? That is, so we need to have subjective instruction. Someone who's sharing that love for Krishna with us. Then the television gets turned on. So, therefore, Srila Prabhupada is saying that what kind of spiritual master I want, unless one is initiated by the right person who carries within his heart always the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot acquire the power to carry the Supreme Godhead within the core of one's own heart. Why is that? Because unless he has this love of Krishna, how can he give us what he doesn't have? What's the use of such a spiritual master? Yes, he can give us objective instruction. He can, you're not this body, your spirit, soul, and so on. All our teachings, conceptual. But but the function of a real spiritual master is for both. That he not only tells us what is our real identity, but he shares with us love of Krishna. There's no other way to get it. We say it every day, that his lotus feet are the only way by which we can attain this pure devotional service. We sing it every day. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandho Mui Savadana Mate. And how, well, from him, he said, he's the only one from whom we can get it. How do we get it? Prema Bhakti Hoite Avidya Vinashayate. From him, this love of Krishna comes. It emanates from him. We have to catch it. But that's what, so they talk what do they call it? Prabhupada Nuga. This is the meaning of Prabhupada Nuga. Anuga means to follow the heartfelt feelings of a real devotee. Anuga. Prabhupada Nuga is not a member of being a member of a club. Is not a member. It's very good that we recognize that Srila Prabhupada is Krishna's confidential servitor, who's always in touch with Krishna face to face. It's very nice, but we should understand the science. We have to understand the science. How do we benefit by having a pure devotee who's come? He's not one of us. He's come from the spiritual world. So simply to help us to share love of Krishna, because that's the only way we can get it. That's the process. So therefore we have to cultivate a very intimate relationship with Krishna's pure devotee. And when we do, we'll feel it's within our heart. So Srila Prabhupada sometimes describes our relationship with him as what? An apprenticeship program. To acquire knowledge, one can read books, one can take a course in a university, that conceptual knowledge. In an apprenticeship program, one works directly under the guidance of a master. One can be learning to be an electrician, or a bricklayer, or a heart surgeon. Hey? All these professions, conceptual book knowledge is required. But to become a heart surgeon, for example, one has to learn from a master how to touch someone's heart. You can't come out of school and begin opening people's chests and work on their heart, or put in a new heart, a heart transplant, what have you. One has to be an apprentice. It's called an intern, an understudy. And so this knowledge is not objective, it's subjective. You learn the feeling. How to touch that brick, how to touch that cement, how to make it snug, how it fits so it's going to dry firm in place. So Srila Prabhupada explains that mechanical engagement in the prescribed forms of devotional service, we do everything on the list that we're supposed to do. It will not serve to invoke feelings of love of Krishna in our heart. We can do it for a million years. At the same time, Srila Prabhupada writes in his Bhagavad Gita purport that one can attain his Krishna consciousness or divine life within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 72, purport. That you can get this feeling, this taste, within a second, or you might not get it after a million births. What is the essential difference between getting it in a second and not getting it in a million births? That circuit has to be closed. That flow has to be there. We have to learn how to feel Srila Prabhupada's presence, and the only way is through love. If we love him, immediately we'll feel his presence as we love him, as much as we love him. Then we will not want to live without. Because it's like having people are in prison and then they go on parole. They're free as long as they're in touch with the parole officer. And if they break this connection with the parole officer, they go back to the prison. When we have a living relationship with Srila Prabhupada, we're on parole. We're in the prison of material consciousness. But if we have a connection with Srila Prabhupada, a living, heartfelt connection, we're out of jail. And if we break parole, then immediately Maya comes like a big cloud over us. Therefore, we should inquire, how can we attain this within a second? Okay? As we cultivate a relationship of loving reciprocation with Srila Prabhupada, who is Krishna's pure devotee, he will share his devotional feelings with us. He will share. 1.5.25 in Bhagavatam, 1.5.25, pure devotion is as much infectious, in a good sense, like an infectious disease. Quote, infection of the qualities of the pure devotee means to imbibe the taste of devotion in the association of a pure devotee. Quote, this taste makes all material taste distasteful. Unquote. Is the same thing. From him, this love of Krishna emanates. And if we can catch it in our heart, avidya, our ignorance is destroyed. Same idea. So many, it's all over our books. It's called the science of Krishna consciousness. So as we cultivate a relationship, but the only way that Srila Prabhupada will reveal himself to us is that we open our heart to him. Open our heart. We say in the prayer, Guru Dev, it says, please let me be with you. Let me feel your presence. Or in the prayer of Bhakti Vinod, Kabe Habe, you have the taste of devotion. When will I hold on to your feet till the end of time? When, oh, when will that day be mine? Because one begins to understand that by being in touch with the transcendental parole officer, we can feel what Krishna consciousness is. But we're not perfect yet, fixed. We're not fixed. So we start to aspire. When will I just hang on to you? So it's in our songbook, it's in our textbook, It's it's in our morning Guru Puja prayer. It's everywhere. Same idea. So when we begin to feel this Krishna consciousness by association, by that connection, we get influenced by that. Become influenced by that. Then, tasting that, whatever service we're doing, we do it with that same feeling. That means we're engaging in devotional service in the association of Krishna's pure devotee. And we're engaging in that service under the guidance, quote unquote, of Krishna's pure devotee. We use these terms every day. So that's how we can, then our whole life becomes that flavor, as long as that connection is maintained. It's not, therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, rubber stamp. I have done this service. I put officially, call it devotional service, rubber stamp, official. But it's not, he said, doesn't want rubber stamp. He wants the real thing, the feeling part. And of course, the Srila Prabhupada says that the conclusion of this talk is that the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, it's not a mechanical transaction between our spiritual master and ourself, that I do the checklist and I get the reward one day. It's a heartfelt relational process which is based on the reciprocation of love. In Krishna consciousness, you've heard it before. We've all heard it. The means and the goal are one and the same. The means and the goal. What's the goal? The goal is love of Krishna. What's the means? The goal is love. The means is love. The love is what opens the door. And when we have love for someone who has a love of Krishna, then we can open the door to him and we can feel his love of Krishna. Then we can imbibe the taste of love of Krishna in his association. Of course, one may say, sometimes we hear, because as Srila Prabhupada has written, he lives forever by his divine instruction. Okay? And the follower lives with him. We hear that. We all know that. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. So people say, but we're following his instructions. What are you talking about? All the sentimental stuff. But Srila Prabhupada gives us another instruction, one of his instructions. What is that? Quote, Madhya Lila, chapter 17, text 15, purport. Here's one of Srila Prabhupada's instruction. A disciple who has actual love for his spiritual master, he's endowed by the blessings of that spiritual master with all confidential knowledge. Okay? This is also, so let us take this instruction to heart. Let us take this instruction that if we have actual love for Srila Prabhupada, we will be endowed by his blessings with all confidence. These are Srila Prabhupada. He lives by his instruction, and the follower, Prabhupada knew the follower of this instruction will be with him, will feel him, will know him, and will understand what is this thing called Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. That's it. Ramchandra Prabhu.
I'm here. So, any questions from Janaspriya Prabhu or discussion point or anything like that? He he lives forever in his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him.
Yeah. Oh, hi. What's your name?
His name is Keshav.
Keshav. You got you're getting new teeth. Really.
This his how old are you, Keshav? 6. He's 6 years old. So
I was once 6 years old. Can you imagine?
you know how old is Prabhu? 70? Not 70. 60? Not 60. 61? Okay, so I mean, we've discussed these points over and over, and Prabhupada repeats it over and over. So it seems like sometimes it's difficult to get away from our default programming. This transactional world is built on transactions. A lot of people's lives depend on this transactional mood.
Uh,
So that's
Srila
difficult.
Prabhupada says the only way that he says you have to keep repeating. We have to keep repeating. Uh, we're saying the same thing from so many sides. In our next class, I'm going to give about 10 different metaphors in our literature that talk about this process
Right.
because well, number one, it has to penetrate. There's a is there if you go to take music lessons, first question of the teacher is, have you ever played you have a saxophone, trombone, you take it. He says, have you ever played before? Yes, I've played before. Then he knows, oh, it's so hard to teach somebody who thinks they already know. Very, very difficult. Very, very easier to teach someone who knows nothing. So very hard to, people have individual devotees, they have their understandings, they, and it's not going to be easy to share what we're trying to share. But why do we talk about this? Because we aspire, we want to also learn to live this way, not because we're perfect, but because we want to become a devotee. And we want to share it with others. By sharing it with others, it helps me to understand. That's what we're supposed to do with amongst ourselves. Talk about the path of devotional service and keep it alive in our hearts like that. So without being able to talk with others about it, it becomes more difficult. It's actually part of the process to share these discussions for everybody's benefit. Just like Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami. Maharaj Parikshit become perfect by hearing, but Shukadev become perfect by speaking. They need each other. We need each other like that.
Jai, so if anything comes up else, our discussion, I'll talk to you over the week. And if
Sure. Who is that? Joseholz. How do you pronounce that?
Jose, I think that's what it is.
Oh,
We have Jose and then Prahlad Prabhu from, where is he, Connecticut or something? He lived here.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what? Have you ever heard these ideas before?
Which ideas?
Which ideas? What we've been talking about all for an hour?
Yeah, I've heard these ideas many times from
Oh,
devotees like yourself and other similar minded, like minded devotees.
are you making
It's
an experiment? Are you experimenting like that? Trying to daily going before Srila Prabhupada Murti or Srila Prabhupada picture and asking him, please, Srila Prabhupada, please, I want to feel your presence in my heart. Can help me to do that. Are you doing like that sometimes?
I should have my own altar with Srila Prabhupada, but every time I see Srila Prabhupada in Morty form or picture, I have a personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada, so yes. Yeah.
That's very nice.
That's the whole point of Krishna consciousness, is to develop the personal relationships.
So little by little in our sadhana, we do like that. If we continue to practice on a daily basis, then gradually we'll be able to carry that feeling of connection within our heart all the time. And then we'll be safe. Then life.
It's a great blessing. I will say it's a great blessing, because from what I've realized or come to realize is, like, it seems like everyone who's not a devotee is trying to tear you or tear people away from Krishna, or like, get rid of their faith in Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. So it's like someone who has that faith is like tremendously blessed, but if you don't have that faith, then it's kind of tough. Everything else it's not going to work out so well.
Right. It's the freedom. We've been here for millions of births. We've been born as everything, and we can imagine as beetles, worms, as elephants, tigers. We've been eating each other and killing each other, and wars and whatnot. And the whole process is just to slowly but break down this spirit of separation, of independence that we want. We don't need Krishna. And but actually we suffer so much. So little by little, so the devotees, they're the ones who are responding to the therapy. The others, they may need a few more thousand lifetimes or whatever. But we're always free to choose at any moment. Yeah.
Jai. So thank you, Ishan Prabhu. If anyone else has any questions, they can contact Ishan Prabhu via his email. His email address is in the playlist of all our videos. And they can converse with Ishan via email. Or if they like to send me a message, they're sure welcome to.
Thank
Any concluding words, Ishan? We're going to
That's
close it
it.
up.
That's it. And thank you very, very much for letting me have this opportunity to share according to my little ability. Yeah. Hare
Jai.
Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glory, Srila Prabhupada.